episode, we're going to go ahead and we're going to make a chess and checkerboard. And what I've got is I got a dark colored wood and a light colored wood, and this is what we're going to use to make our checkerboard. I've cut them 20 inches long, and then we're going to have to cut each of these down to 2-inch squares, because the regulation size of a chessboard is about, each square is about 2.25, around there. I'm going to make mine just at 2, so to keep it even. So then when we get done with that, the board itself is going to be 16 by 16. And what we're going to end up with is this is what we're going to end up with. So basically, we're going to take these chunks right here of hardwood, and we're going to turn it into a chess and checkerboard. So the first thing I got to do is we're going to go over to the table saw, and I'm going to go ahead and cut my strips each. So we're going to need 4 of the maple and 4 of the mahogany. We use power tools or hand tools. Put on our safety glasses, plug in our power, and we'll go ahead and cut our pieces. So as always, we wait for the blade to stop. So I've got my 4 pieces, I've got my 4 mahogany and my 4 maple. So now we're going to take those back over, dark, light, out for our 8 pieces, and that'll be our first glue, and then we'll have to cut them again to do the second glue. Start with one of the dark pieces, set that out, dark, light. Is going to be square, so we're going to make sure we square that up before we clamp it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these bar clamps to actually clamp it. So the first thing we got to do is we actually got to apply our glue, and then we'll get ready to put the pieces together. And before I forget, remember I had some strips left over. Well, this is expensive wood, so we're not going to let this go to waste. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take these extra strips and we're going to make another cutting board out of it. So then we'll get 2 projects out of one with little to no waste. So we take our glue and we're going to spread this around on each piece. So we want to make sure we get it nice and thick. So we're ready to go on. So what we're going to do now is we flip them down. So we go one down, and then we take the other edge, it doesn't have the glue on it, and that's going to go against our glue edge, and glue that down. And we're going to do this through the whole process. And we're going to take our clamps, and we're going to get these ready to clamp on the sides. We're going to take our square and make sure that we're square on both sides, clamps, and we're going to start clamping them down. Before we go on, but what we got to do now is we're going to have to let this dry. So now the glue is dried, so I've taken the clamps off, and this is what we've got. This is our straight edge that we wanted to have, and this is our other edge that we're going to trim off. But if you can see it, you've got little bits of higher edges on different pieces. So before we go to the table saw and cut that down, I'm going to take and I'm going to use the belt sander, and we're going to go ahead and sand down so we get this as smooth as possible, because if you remember correctly, anytime that we're working with wood, this is the way the grain goes. Okay? So when we're sanding with a belt sander, we got to make sure we sand with the grain. Sides. And I'm going to do that to both sides of this board before we go on to the next step. So now we're back at the table saw, and just like our 2-inch strips for each of our pieces that we cut, power is still unplugged because we're going to make adjustments, but we want to make sure that we're going to cut them in 2-inch pieces. So there's 2, and checking it again, there's our 2. Okay, now comes the part that's like a puzzle. We cut our pieces, and if you remember correctly, when we had this in a full slab, one side ended up light and one side ended up dark. This is the important thing when you're gluing it together, because what you want to end up with is you've got to alternate. So you're going to start on one side and have a dark piece, and then you're going to flip the other piece to have a light. So it's going to be dark, light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, light. We're going to go to the gluing part, and this you want to make sure that you're lined up on both sides to make sure that your board's even, and then we can put a finish around the edges, and we'll be ready to go. But we'll have to, once we glue this and this dries, we're going to have to let it sit, and then we're going to have to sand it again, and again we're going to sand it with different sanders to make sure that we have all of our pieces that are level. So we're going to go ahead and glue these. And then we're going to take another clamp and we're going to put it on top in the middle. If you had a planer, you could run this through a planer afterwards, and it'd take less sanding, but you can do this with a belt sander, a disc sander, and then a finish sander when you're done. Okay, while our board is drying, I'm going to take this dowel. This is 1 1/4 inches round. So what I've done is I've set up a jig here. I'm going to make each piece 1/4 inch thick, like that. And that's going to be your checker pieces. So we're going to need 24 of them. And then what we're going to do is we're going to leave 12 of them in the natural color, and then we're going to stain 12 of them into a dark walnut or a dark oak. So we're going to take this dowel, and I'm going to go ahead and I got this jig set up. We're going to go ahead and we're going to cut our 24 pieces. First thing, before we use hand tools or power tools, safety glasses. Okay, so now I've got the board finished. What I did is I used tung oil to actually put the finish on the board once I sanded it all down. And what I did is I took it and put a lot on there, and I spread it out with a brush and let that soak in for about 5 minutes, and then wiped it off with a microfiber cloth. So now we've got it set up as our checkerboard. So as you can see, we have our checkers. I put a border around the edge to tie it all together, and so we have our checkerboard. But what I did is I went ahead and bought a chess set. Okay, and I bought this on Amazon. Are checkers that we can actually use, so you can have chess set and a checker set with the same board. Remember, always dream, think, design, build, and learn.